Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught! Jelani Woods, touchdown! ISB!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody, welcome aboard on this Friday, September 8th. Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you from high atop the 18th fairway here at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. An absolute loaded show today, and we're going to get right to it. J.D. Campbell sitting in with us, and Matt Taylor is with us right now to start off things. Matthew, how are you? J.D., how are things going with you?
I'm doing great, man. Another weekend, big weekend of sports action. We'll be following all the college football, the opening of the NFL, and then also a couple of great wild card races going on in Major League Baseball as they finish up the last 2-3 weeks of the season.
Absolutely. Plenty of things to talk about. College sports football last night, tonight for Indiana, and the Colts kicking off their season. And we've got the man, Matt Taylor, with us. Matthew, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, fellas. JD, I had so much respect for you until you decided to do this show with this guy. So
I appreciate that.
What happened, man? You stooped to his level.
No, I just get free barbecue.
It's a great.
We had to do something to raise it up, man.
That's right. That's right. No, it's good to be
high
with
tides,
you guys.
High tides raise all ships, right?
That's it, man. Yeah, good analogy right there. You're
Nothing
bringing it on a
better.
Friday morning.
Hey, I got to. But look who I have with me. You know, how can you not? J.D.
Yep.
Campbell and Matt Taylor at the same time. Man, big weekend. I know you're an IU fan, so Indiana plays tonight, which is not a good thing because it's a Friday night, but that's another thing. But kicking off this weekend are the Colts. Anthony Richardson making his debut. And so there's just a lot going on.
Oh, it's incredibly exciting, no doubt about it. I mean, Anthony Richardson, to your point, he becomes the youngest quarterback in the history of the Colts franchise to start a game, and he will become the third youngest quarterback in the history of the National Football League to start a regular season game. So he's 21 years old, and I think 111 days coming up on Sunday. So a lot of youth, and obviously, I mean, everybody's been talking about it all off season with only 13 games under his belt last year at Florida and the completion percentage and all of that. But, I think his growth has been something that's been really fun to watch since the spring and during training camp. He's really come a long way, both physically and mentally. And I don't even know what to expect on Sunday. That's the best part of this in terms of where Richardson's going to be, schematically what the Colts are going to look like, because obviously they've held it pretty close to the vest during the preseason. So, Sunday is going to be like Christmas morning, man. You unwrap your toys and you see what you got.
Yeah, JD, you've seen a lot of guys go from college right to the pros. This guy, Anthony's going to be starting. That's a tough place there's no harder position in sports than a quarterback, and no harder position than quarterback in the NFL. And this is going to be his first shot at that.
Matt, the question I would have about Anthony is when a young guy comes in and he's very much hyped, a lot of times it can cause, maybe they get tested by their teammates. Maybe they get shunned a little bit. But talk about what you've seen as this young man's come in, and he's going to be handed the reins of being,
Sure.
at least the face of the franchise for a little bit.
Oh, he's been given the keys for the entire season. I mean, Shane Steichen made that clear a couple of weeks ago. This is our guy not only for week one, but we're going to ride with him, barring injury for the entire season. The 2023 campaign is his, and there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. There's no question about that. I mean, any rookie quarterback goes through that, but especially a guy, again, with such a thin resume, you can expect there to be some bumps in the road. But, to your point, I think what we have seen so far from Richardson on the practice field, how he handles himself in the locker room, like he is not he is destined to not just be a trivia question. You know, the guy the Colts picked in the first round in 2023, he is determined to be great. And I think you're going to see greatness from Anthony Richardson. It's just a question of time, right? How long it takes. I think he's got the correct mental makeup to make that happen. And the Colts, you know, to drive home the point further, they've made him a captain. You know, they had a players only meeting. They had a players only vote for team captains. They had 7 of them, and Anthony Richardson was one of them. And a lot of the other captains are guys that, you know, have been captains for 4, 5, 6 years, like, you know, Shaq Leonard or Quentin Nelson, Kenny Moore, DeForest Buckner. But then there's this 21-year-old. And I think you have to be a leader playing that position, right? When you are a franchise quarterback in the NFL, you have to be a leader. And I think you have to be one of the biggest leaders within the team. But, you know, you have to, with that said, you have to earn it, right? You still have to go out there and prove to your teammates that you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to hold yourself just as accountable, if not more, than everybody else within that offense. Because let's face it, he plays the most important position in all of sports. So, you know, mental makeup wise, Anthony Richardson has checked every box. Obviously, we know what he can do physically. It's just going to be fun to see how he kind of puts it all together, how he compartmentalizes all of these experiences in real time and grows on the fly week to week in his rookie season.
Yeah, and the veterans, they have to buy into him as well. And I know he has to prove himself. He has to earn it, like you said. But they also have to be behind him and give him that feeling of confidence, I guess you'd say.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, a guy like Zaire Franklin, I think Zaire Franklin, as of right now, is the unquestioned, you know, biggest leader within the Colts locker room. You know, either side of the ball. You're talking about a guy that's going into a 6-year multi-season captain. Guy just gets it, right? I mean, he just exudes professionalism both on and off the field. But even a guy like that has to let himself be led by a guy that is, you know, 6, 7 years younger than him right now. And I think that's important because you have to have other leaders within the team, but you also have to let yourself be led by your franchise quarterback, a guy that has the weight of the franchise seemingly on his shoulders. You have to show confidence in him in order for this team to go where it wants to go and rebound from a 4-12-1 season and contend for the playoffs. So it's really exciting to see the veterans, buy into Anthony Richardson. And this team does have plenty of vets on it, but they're young vets, if that makes sense. I mean, the Colts have, I looked it up yesterday, the Colts have the 3rd youngest roster in the NFL going into the season. Age-wise, they're like 25.7 years old, average age-wise, within the roster. That's the 3rd youngest roster in the NFL going into the season. And of their 53 players, 22 of them are either first or second-year players. That's 41% of the roster has less than 2 years of NFL experience. So you're talking about baptism by fire, a lot of guys taking on bigger roles starting on Sunday. There's no question about that. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. It just means there's a lot of trust and a lot of belief in some of the young pieces on this roster to grow, and hopefully that leads to some wins.
And we saw the NFL season get kicked off last night in a good game between Detroit and Kansas City. And Kansas City gets knocked off, man. Jared Goff had a great night up in Detroit, and they get the win.
That's it. Parity in the NFL is king. I know the Lions have, a lot of hype about them, and they backed it up last night. But it's going to be fun to see how this whole thing shakes out, especially in the AFC. I mean, if you're looking at the AFC conference right now, if you look at that side of the ledger in the NFL, like who you crossing out right now in terms of having no shot to make the playoffs? There's just so many great teams and so many great quarterbacks. Think of all the good teams and good quarterbacks that aren't going to make the AFC in the playoffs this year. So it's going to be a jumbled mess the entire season. I say it every year, but there's at least, you have to go back to 1990, right? From 1990 on, every year in that stretch, there's been at least 4 teams that make the playoffs that did not the year before. Last year, that number was 7. Half of the playoff field was a new team in 2022 that didn't make it in 2021. So, the Jaguars were a team that went from worst to first in the division. They won the AFC South last year. They were 9-8. They went on that flurry to close out the season. They were 7-2 down the stretch. And, that's the team the Colts get right out of the gate week 1. And I don't think there's any reason why the Colts can't be that team. I really don't. I don't think there's any reason why the Colts can't compete, make this thing interesting. There are literally zero outside national expectations on the Colts. I totally get that. But this is the NFL where every game comes down to the last 4 minutes. The league set a record last year in number of games across the NFL decided by 8 points. So they all come down to the wire. There's really not much separation between these rosters. It's all about execution, and we'll see if the Colts can be better in that regard down the stretch of the season.
Guys, did you see the end of the game last night? I was baffled when they went for it, the Lions, 4th and 2, right around midfield. I couldn't understand why they didn't punt the ball, but maybe I'm missing something because
was this the first, their second series of the game?
No, this was at the end of the game.
Oh, they went for it the second series of the game inside their 20. They fake punted inside their own 20. I couldn't believe that.
And then Kansas City had a couple penalties, but I know the big talk today is about their their receivers dropping a lot of balls. And, that's just unfortunate. They've got the best guy behind center that there is right now. And unfortunately, that sort of thing happens. And it is there always, I think, is a hangover anytime you win that Super Bowl that it's really hard to get everybody with that hunger, at least early on, I think. And then maybe they can turn it back around. But great for the Lions. That's just right. I read something yesterday. They have won one playoff game since 1957. And that to me is
they have
Cubs.
They have the longest streak in professional sports, if I'm not mistaken, longest playoff drought streak, which is
wow.
That's incredible. But I actually did not watch the game last night, so I just saw the highlights. But I was working on some game prep myself. But I will say, this is sort of a tangent. JD, you did bring up 4th down. It does. It spawns an idea in my head because you look at the Colts with Shane Steichen now as their offensive coordinator, and he's the head coach, but he's going to be calling plays. Last year he was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, and we saw it all during that playoff run during the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts would line up under center, and they would perfect that tush push play, where they go for it on a quarterback sneak. I read last night because I think it's going to be very applicable for Sunday's game with Anthony Richardson under center. They ran that quarterback sneak 41 times last year, and they converted 37 of them. That's 90%. And so the Eagles, I know a lot of people don't like the play. They think it should be outlawed. The NFL competition committee took a hard look at it. That's football, man. Quarterback sneak. It's going to be hard to kind of outlaw that. And you certainly you're getting help from the backfield. So the NFL decided that, hey, as long as you're not pulling people up the field, you can push people up the field. I think, listen, Anthony Richardson, 6'4", 260. That's going to be a big part of their arsenal this season. So I'm interested to see how that comes to fruition coming up on Sunday. But yeah, you bringing up 4th down kind of threw me on a tangent for the Colts, but excited to see if and how much they use that this year.
Well, I was excited to be able to watch a game on TV. Right now, I've got DirecTV. I can't get Fox. I can't get CBS.
Oh my gosh!
And,
I know.
I understand Charter, Spectrum, or whatever. They're having some issues with the ESPN family of networks, and
come on over, JD. Come on over. Yeah, dial it up, buddy. Get out that AM talker. Come on now. We got
JD,
you covered.
You know who does the best Don Fisher imitation? Don Fisher's the hardest guy to impersonate I've ever heard. Seriously, it's just his cadence, his just everything about it. And I know somebody who can do a great one. I hate putting him on the spot, but on the way out, give us a little Don.
It's time now for the pregame report with J.D. Campbell. J.D., absolutely fantastic bowl game last time out. Indiana knocks South Ohio State 75-71. Let's talk about Trey Galloway's performance the other night. He had 12 rebounds and 22 points off the bench for the Hoosiers. J.D., your thoughts on this young man growing, coming into his own, and doing a nice job off the bench for Indiana?
Oh, I love Trey. Love me some Trey Galloway.
Oh, he's a great. Hell yeah.
Matt Taylor, you're a great one,
Beat it
buddy.
up
We
for
love
you.
you and appreciate you. Good luck to the Colts this weekend. We'll be looking forward to it.
All right, guys. I appreciate you. Good to see you,
Good
JD.
luck.
Jim, have a good weekend. Yep.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you, boss. Matt Taylor joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. More coming up as Bob Kravitz joins us next here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, powered by Andy Moore Honda. Of course, go to Andy Moore Honda to get more to your door. And the Wow Food Group and the wealth of family of restaurants in and around the Bloomington and Bedford areas, like the Rusty Gator at Fork and Ale down in Bedford. Back with Bob Kravitz right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the
What's up, boys?
Good day, sir.
So when we had our radio show, we used to have Matt Taylor do the score updates as Fish and Marv Albert.
Oh, is that right?
And Benner. It was hysterical.
Oh, he does Marv Albert too. Damn it, I didn't know.
He
All
does
right.
a great Marv Albert. Yes.
Oh my. Yes. Comes down to the left side, puts it up for 40. Got it.
Not bad.
Marv, what's Marv? Is Marv still alive?
Yeah, he's still going strong. He was old when I was young, and now we're both old. I don't know how that works.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yes.
How was golf this week?
I'm playing today and playing in a tournament on Monday. I'm kind of in a slump. I'm having a hard time breaking 90 these days, but
You're playing in a tournament? Look at you.
no, like a charity tournament. So, yeah, playing a little bit. I'm working more than I ever have.
Well, see, that's what happens when you go to work for yourself.
Exactly. I don't want to piss myself off.
Well, you never know. You might get fired.
I know. I've had enough of that experience in the last 5 years.
Bob, as subscriber number 3 to your musings, I want to congratulate you. Really enjoying the content.
Thank you, buddy.
And, I just think it's great, and you are. I mean, there's stuff popping in my inbox all the time.
Yeah.
I know you are the busiest dude. I'm like, damn it, slow down. I'm like, I got a lot of stuff I got to read, and you're making my life harder.
I'm still not as prolific as Doyle, who's just insane in every imaginable way. But I'm trying to write 3-4 times a week and keep it steady.
Now,
Go ahead.
What will you take on besides the Colts? Obviously, is there anything else we can look forward to this weekend?
It's going to be heavy Colts. It's just
Sure.
I wrote about Richardson today. I got something out just popped in this morning, and I don't think I'll be doing any college football this weekend. It's all Colts.
You were at the game last week. At the golf club at Eagle Point, students can play for the rest of 2023 for just $299. That's right. Play as many rounds as you like for just $299. That's better than a birdie. But you don't have to be a student to play at Eagle Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Hank's Pizza Mac. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this game day Friday as Indiana takes on the Indiana State Sycamores tonight at 7. Right now joining us, Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.substack.com. He's his own boss.
I am.
Your boss must be cracking the whip because, as JD Campbell was with us said in the break, his inbox as a subscriber is full of. Yeah, so was mine. I'm like, dude, you're making my life hard. You're putting out so much content to read. I've got so many things I've got to read, and you keep stuffing it.
I'm sorry, but this new gig, man, I can't get away with writing once or twice a week. I told people I was going to go back to what I was doing at the Star all those years ago, and that's what I'm doing, trying to write 3-4 a week and staying engaged in everything that's going on.
What's it? Is it? I know it's working harder is not fun, is not the word, but is it when you're working for yourself, which I know very much about? It's a different mentality, but it's also a different reward.
It is. I mean, it's very energizing. I mean, the big thing for me, guys, is I'm writing kind of the way I've always wanted to write. You know, I'm writing what I want, when I want, how I want,
and saying what you want.
Oh yeah, and using curse words every once in a while, which is kind of natural, comes natural to me as a New Yorker. But it's been fun. I mean, I was not happy at The Athletic. I think I made that abundantly clear in my first column, and this has been a blast. It's not big money yet, but it's growing. We've only been doing it for about a month and a half, and we're already well over 500 subscribers. So. It's doing well.
As subscriber number 3 to your lovely column, I just want to say how much I've enjoyed seeing you redevelop and redefine your opinion pieces. And I think, you know, from the PR side of it, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, people, you know, opinions, but it's kind of like, you know, we're all in the same industry here, and we've got to create interest because there's so much now that can distract people. And I think great coverage, consistent coverage of the things that are important to us as fans is really something that I'm enjoying seeing, and less maybe analytic driven thought, and, you know, where that side of it impacts what you do as a writer. And that's what that's what I started thinking, you know, last 5-10 years, is that, you know, if it was a certain person or a certain subject, you could bet on that being covered ad nauseum.
Right. Absolutely. No, this has been a blast. I'll be down at IU a lot more frequently than I have been the last couple of years. Again, this is not a shot at The Athletic, but they didn't want me to cover games. You know, IU's got a big game against whoever, Purdue. They weren't that interested in games. They wanted stuff, you know, bigger picture stuff. So, which is fine, and I wish them all the best. But I know what I am. I'm rediscovering what I am, which is a 1,000-word opinion columnist. And, you know, I can do the long stuff when I need to, but that's not my biggest strength. My biggest strength is that 850 to 1,100 word opinion on Deion Sanders or Anthony Richardson or whomever.
And right now, your latest piece out is about Anthony Richardson as he gets ready to make his debut for the Colts this weekend.
Yeah, he did a really smart thing a year ago when he was at the University of Florida. Actually, his mentor reached out to him and said, you know, you really ought to contact this mental coach, a guy named Brad Ledbetter. So, you know, and Anthony's like, well, you're my outlet, man. Why do I have to see somebody? He said, no, see a professional. And whoever his mentor was at the time, I think Vernell Brown, really did him a favor, because it gives him somebody he can talk to, he can talk things through with. Because look, it's a lot of pressure. It's not the same type of pressure that Andrew Luck faced, you know, because he had to replace Peyton Manning immediately, both on and off the field. But there's a lot of pressure for a kid. He played 13 games in college, and now he's the face of the franchise. He's the third youngest quarterback ever to start an NFL game. So, it's good that he's got a support system around him, both the mental coach and his family, many of whom live up here now.
Yeah, more importantly, what's he going to have around him on the field? Is he going to have the things he needs to protect him, the offensive weapons to get to? I know that it's not a playoff team set up right now, but that's one of the hardest things for a new quarterback is not being thrown to the lions without some protection.
Right. Well, I think the O-line will be much better. Remember Matt Ryan and Nick Foles were statues back there. I think they'll be much better. Plus Anthony Richardson can get out of trouble so much easier than a Matt Ryan or a Nick Foles. But yeah, I'm worried about their running backs. I'm worrying about their wide receivers and tight ends. I don't think they've really properly addressed surrounding Anthony with the kinds of weapons he's going to need. Remember Peyton in '98 when they went 3-13 and he threw a record for a number of interceptions. He had Marvin Harrison and Marshall Faulk on the same offense, and he still went 3-13. So I don't expect much this year, but it'll be fun watching the kid grow.
Absolutely. And speaking of the same Indiana football in kind of the same position, you were at the game last week and they run in two different quarterbacks. They'll do the same this week. I have said that I am so disagreeing with what they have done, that the fact that they could not determine who their quarterback was before the first game, get him all the needed snaps he needs. The Ohio State game is going to be tough, but you've got a game against Indiana State tonight that I think that whoever this guy is, he needs all those snaps, because next week you're playing Louisville, who has a quarterback that had played for Jeff Brom at Purdue, then went to California, threw for over 3,000 yards and like 25 touchdowns, and now he's running that offense. So they're just put themselves further behind by doing that, but it is what it is.
Well, I made the point in my column. What the hell is summer and fall camp? What are you doing? If you can't determine who your starting quarterback is through all that time, and it's the old saw, if you got two quarterbacks, you really got none. And I think that's really true. And although Walt Bell seems to think they're both NFL prospects, so who am I to say? But all I saw was a team that played not to lose. They just tried to keep it close, and the defense was inspiring. Defense was tremendous. And if they can carry that over,
Aaron Casey was the madman. Yeah, I think their defense played well enough, JD, to not only keep them in games, but keep them in games. If they can get the offense to be something, this team has a chance to make a bowl game with the teams that on their schedule. But they have got to get this offense turned around quickly.
Well, I think their defense was just unbelievable when you look
at the first game one.
Yeah, especially when you look at some of the weapons that Ohio State has. Now, Ohio State was in a similar situation at quarterback where, again, one of the things that came to mind as you guys were talking is how difficult it is to replicate game conditions in practice, whether it's a spring, whether it's a fall camp or whatever. Again, I seem to come on here and I'm old guy again. And I just remember, how physical and two-a-days and all those different things. And they don't have that anymore. With everything that they're doing, I think on the basketball side, I'm not so sure I wouldn't mind seeing a preseason game for college football in August, just to be able to replicate the game conditions. I think that's really helpful.
Joint practices are all the rage in the NFL.
Yeah,
the coaches feel like they get more out of those than they do preseason games because they don't want to show anything. So joint practices might be something they would consider as have the NFL.
Yeah, you
and
can
I think,
construct that to work to your advantage to do the things that specifically you want to do without worry about any consequences.
Well, and I think when you have a situation where you haven't really settled in on a starter, and look, there's a lot more schools than Indiana that haven't, settled on anybody. And I think the main thing is to try to get those guys confidence, experience, and usually, a guy steps up. I think both quarterbacks give them interesting options. I think, when you look at, they've got one that's kind of on the shelf right now, recovering from an injury from last year. I just think that, keeping people off balance offensively. And I will say this, the one takeaway that I had from college football last week was how much quicker the games were because of the clock rules.
Yes.
And it was I remember last year watching the opening weekend, and it seemed like every game was almost 4 hours.
4 hours. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, watching last week, their teams are getting 2 and 3 possessions, maybe 4.5. And you're like, you got to make the most of them.
Yeah.
And that puts a little more pressure on these guys, on these quarterbacks who are new, because they don't have that extra time to wait for plays or decision making. It's squeezing their window in, so it's making it a little bit more difficult on these guys that are trying to learn.
Yeah, I think it may have the same impact on the college football game, which has suffered from the amount of time that it takes to play games, much like baseball.
Yeah,
it's just, there's a better pace and a rhythm to it. At least that's what I thought the first week, and we'll see how it goes this week.
Robert,
yeah, go ahead. You had a question for me?
Well, I assume your next column will be on the game for the Colts Sunday, the results after that. Yeah.
Well, I'll be doing the Colts this weekend. Actually, we're going tonight to the Jim Irsay band.
You're going? Are you singing for one of them? Are you opening up?
Jim and I are doing Lawyers, Guns, and Money together.
Yes.
No, we're going to go tonight. Have a few cocktails, have some fun, and then the game is Sunday, obviously. So I'll write my column off that, and then the return of the Dopey report card on Monday late afternoon. That will be back. It didn't make sense at the Athletic when you had guys looking at the all-22 film and really breaking stuff down. I was like, this is the stupidest thing. But for my Dopey website, I think the Dopey report card probably fits in well.
I would really have loved to have gone to this tonight and wanted to, but the Big Ten decided, hey, it's better to have college football on a Friday night.
Right.
And so I can't do that. But that's
you and Tom Allen are thrilled.
Well, I don't think that we're the only ones, but they're going to do what they're going to do. Well, brother, you enjoy it. Are you taking the guitar? Are you taking the bass with you? What do you?
Cowbell.
Nice.
I need more cowbell, baby.
I've got your cowbell right here.
Blue oyster
that's
Kravitz.
Perfect.
Blue oyster Kravitz. Don't fear the writer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Oh, man. Robert, enjoy
man.
it, buddy. Have a great
boys.
night. We love you. Appreciate you. Have fun.
See you guys. See you, JD.
Make sure you are a subscriber to bobkravitz.substack.com. If you're not, you are missing out. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. JD Campbell's with us. Zach Osterman will be joining us right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, when the basketball season closes in, can we do a podcast?
I'd be happy to do anything with you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I finally learned how to do a podcast correctly. So by the time we get to basketball season, I'll have this thing down.
Perfect. Happy to talk about it.
All right. I'll talk to you later. See you guys.
All right. See you guys.
Enjoy tonight.
I will.
By the way, Jim, Zach is not this segment, but the segment after. This is just you and JD.
Damn it. I knew that. I could have
It's
taken
okay.
Bob a little bit longer. That's all right. And that's 10. It's 9, 10 right now. Is 9:50 open?
No, it's Todd Golden.
Oh, forgot.
And then
Gee
10:10 is Travis Miller.
Right. Travis Miller is from the Purdue rival site, JD.
Okay.
Just an FYI.
Disappointing for them last week.
I have picked
Fresno
him to
coming in and
win.
sneaking in.
Yeah, that's like Indiana if they lose to Louisville. That's a tough game on the schedule that you don't need to lose because they end up they play.
Being a West Coast guy, I can tell you, Fresno State's got a tremendous culture. They're always undervalued and always, they can beat you. They always seem to have good talent there.
Well, that's where Kalen DeBoer went back to. So yeah. Hello, Fozan. Listening in from Amman, Jordan. Crazy. I hope things are well over halfway around the world. You're on everywhere, JD. You're global.
Frightening.
Trust me, it's been frightening for me for a while. The USA and Germany are playing right now in World Cup. Playing Germany, and they're tied. 36.
Second quarter?
It is 7:52 left.
In the game?
All right, here we go, guys.
You need to get YouTube TV.
My son has it, and I borrowed it so I could watch IU last week.
10 seconds. Here we go, guys. GarnishCatering.com. That's GarnishCatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of WOW Food Group. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by WOW Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Friday. It is game day. Indiana taking on the Sycamores of Indiana State tonight. And then it gives you the weekend for free. JD Campbell, former IU Sports Information Director, with us on this day. Lots with Indiana playing tonight. And you got the weekend after that. Purdue coming off of a loss last week. Not good for them. And how about this little baseball tidbit before I get past? The Marlins, an adult Marlins ball boy, picked up a live ball, throws it into the stands, and then he finds out as he's spitting into his spit bottle what he did wrong.
Well, yeah, I saw that last night. It goes back to a couple weeks ago when the shortstop, I think his name's Wynn from St. Louis, got his first career hit, and Alonso shook the ball and then threw it up, didn't realize. And I don't know if he got the ball back or not, but I know that Pete Alonso gave him some tequila, which I don't know if that makes, and an autograph, which I always, I think it's hilarious when these guys give each other autographs and stuff like that. And
or swap their jerseys.
Yeah. Well, I jersey swapping, that's a cool, to me, that's kind of a cool thing. But when and one thing I have been doing is watching a lot more baseball than just the Braves. And, I was watching a series last weekend with the Braves and the Dodgers, and they've got guys ball boys down in the corner, and I saw like a play coming, and I saw ball boy run behind the right fielder into fair ground because he was coming toward where he was sitting, and he's grabbing his chair. And it's just one of those things. It's part of the game now. At least the one thing I'm happy about is, at least for most of the time, you don't see bullpens down the line anymore. That's the one thing that always bothered me.
Oh, yeah. I've never understood that. That was the dumbest, most dangerous thing in the history of sports. I would not have wanted to be, especially if you're the guy that has your back to the plate.
Yeah, that and unpadded walls are two things that I shake my head at and say, because you see guys going into the walls now all the time because they're padded. They're not out of control. But you think about old Riverfront Stadium, man, those walls, gray walls in the outfield, and you never saw guys try to take them head on because you would lose.
No, it was like the natural when Bump, what was his name? Bump Phillips, Bump Bailey goes through the wall. Yeah, craziness. Speaking of your Atlanta Braves are just running away with it. They're 91 wins right now. Milwaukee, as a comparison, 77 wins, leading the Central Division. But the Central Division has a shot at putting 3 teams in the playoffs, which is a little crazy. It's a lot crazy, to be honest with you. But the Cubs made that run, and they have kept themselves up there. They're only 2 games back. They're only 1 win less than Milwaukee right now. But the Reds, they're hanging tough. They're 5.5 games back in the division, but they've got 73 wins, 73-69. So that puts them there with a wild card spot at the moment.
Well, I think the thing, and I've shared this with a couple people, baseball right now, to me, and you can agree or disagree, but I think it has a March Madness feel. I think it's just a matter of getting into the tournament and then take a look, and maybe you get hot at the right time. Your health pitching wise can sustain playing an extra 4 weeks. It's hard to me to see, teams having to win 3 and 4 series. But if you look at recent history, 2019, the Nationals came out and won the World Series after winning the wild card. 2021, the Braves were the 3 seed and came back and won the World Series, beating Milwaukee, then LA, then Houston. And then last year you saw the run the Phillies made, which I thought the Phillies were an awful team heading into the postseason. And they just ran through St. Louis. They ran through Atlanta. They ran through San Diego. And that's why I know a lot of people say, well, the Braves, and, you have the Orioles and the Dodgers that people are talking about. Houston right now is unbelievable. They had an insane series at Texas.
Altuve, what man? God, that little dude! Did he have 3 home runs in a game?
He had 3, but he had 4 and 4 at bats going back to the game before. And so it's really interesting. I think, again, depending upon, I think people right now in baseball are more about their own team. I'm so happy for Reds fans. So we know so many Reds fans in this area, and they haven't had anything to play for this time of year in a long time. So I'm very happy for them. But, scheduling, I think, every day when I walk, I listen to different podcasts, and they were talking about, Toronto and Texas are coming up. They have a matchup here soon, and they're right. They're right in the mix. They're getting ready to play each other, and I think a lot of it's going to be scheduling. I know in that American League West, you've got 3 teams. Texas and Seattle and Houston, and Texas is done playing Houston, but Texas and Seattle play 7 of the last 10 games of the season. So, the scheduling, I think, means so much like it did a year ago for my Braves when they finished up with 3 games at home in the second to last series of the year when they swept the Mets and then got the tiebreaker to win the division. So it'll be a fun 3 weeks, and there's there's a lot of teams still involved, more so in the National League. And the American League looks like it's coming down to 4 teams. That won't include the Red Sox or Yankees.
That is amazing. The 2 highest payrolls in all of baseball. How does that? How did they not
throw the Mets in there too? In that,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking. Well, I was talking about the Mets. See, how far down are they? Yeah, second to last. 27 games out.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible with the roster they had, but I guess it's not how it works. But getting the Atlanta Braves, though, here's the thing that is, it's hard to say. You would know more because they have had so many different seasons where they were just so dominant and expected to win a World Series. Didn't happen. But one of the things that just is jumping off the page at me when you look at the standings, and it's been this way for a while, because in the Central Division, the leader did not have a positive run differential for most of the season, Milwaukee. It took them, and even right now, they're only plus 24. You compare that to the Braves, they're plus 233, and nobody else in Major League Baseball is even close to that. The Orioles leading the East is plus 112. It's just crazy how many runs that they're scoring and keeping off the board.
Well, and I think when you look at the Braves, I think their niche right now offensively is the fact that 1 through 9 can leave the yard at any time. They're 7, 8, and 9. The numbers they have are phenomenal. They're Ozzie Albies is 1 home run away from giving them 5 guys with 30 home runs, yet their catching position, which they platoon, Sean Murphy and Travis d'Arnaud, they've combined to hit 30 home runs. So, that's the thing. They're a guy can, Matt Olson, I'll give you an example. Last week when they go to San Francisco and Colorado and LA, the guy was really, really scuffling. And they weren't getting hits. He went a 19-game stretch without a home run, and yet in those 19 games, they went 15-4. Most teams couldn't survive their best power hitter not being able to come through for almost a 3-week period. And then he gets 1 bomb in a loss on Sunday, and he's come back and hit home runs in each of the 3 games since. So he's gone 4 straight games. He's going to lead the majors in home run with Ohtani out. He's up to 47 right now. And that's what makes the Braves so good is they've got guys. They usually have 2 or maybe 3 guys at a time that are really clicking in the lineup. And then you may have another guy who's not hitting the ball well. Or 2 guys that aren't contributing as much. But man, they can beat you from any spot, and that's why they are where they are. I've been a Braves fan since 1982 when I first got to see TBS and followed them. I was a Reds fan prior to that, and the one thing I know about
switched, you jumped off.
Oh yeah, I was. I'll tell you what really bothered me the most was, and again, it was very early on in that system, but I was furious they traded Tony Perez to Montreal after 76, and they gave the job to Dan Dreesen. I understand what they were thinking, but then Rose left, and then slowly but surely the exodus continued with Griffey.
Was that the first breakup of the dynasty? I mean, I know it's happened before, but I remember that what you're talking about. I was a kid and it was almost heartbreaking. But that was the breakup of a dynasty.
Well, more importantly, I think, and again, I think that Tony Perez was the guy that could keep the mental aspect and keep guys together going for the same goal. If you go back and look at history, there was such an intense rivalry between Johnny Bench and Pete Rose, two completely polar opposite guys. One had more national, publicity. The other guy was Mr. Cincinnati. And you had Joe Morgan and Tony Perez there trying to keep everybody synchronized and keep them together. And then, so Perez leaves. And then, Pete Rose left. And like I say, I thought the fact that they got Tom Seaver in 77 was the greatest thing ever. I thought, oh my God, you finally have a legitimate number one. And if you look at Seaver's career, I think they went to the playoffs just once, won the division in 79, got swept by the Pirates, and then finished with the best record in the strike here in 81. But all those years they were winning division titles and winning the 2 world championships. They just kind of had a pedestrian type, probably the best pitcher that they had in my mind was Don Gullett at the time.
Yeah, actually, my number in sports, 41, throughout my career was because of Tom Seaver, without question. You watched the Purdue game last week. That was an unexpected loss for the Boilers. I picked them to win. We have just a straight pick 'em for ISB radio for the fans that we do. It's just a straight pick, 10 games, and man, that I don't know if I'm shocked, but probably not, because we spoke in a break that that's a team that is probably undervalued. But when you're at home, and that's a game that you kind of have to win because they have a tough conference schedule as well. They play Michigan and Ohio State this year. So that was not a loss that they expected, and not a good one, especially when you have a new coach and staff.
Well, I'll give you a story about opening week. In 2000, when I was at Bowling Green, we ended the season at Toledo, which was our main rival, and we got boat raced 52-17. And then the coach at Toledo got the job at Missouri. We hired Urban Meyer. So we opened up the next season at Missouri against the same coach that boat raced us 52-17. And we ended up going into Columbia and winning 20-17 with essentially the same talent that we had in that final game. And I just think that a lot of times it can go either way. Anytime you have a coaching change, again, most everything changes. And you can look at teams and that first game, I don't care who you play. There are nerves. And, you kind of hope you can get out to a lead and handle and control the game. But when it does go back and forth like that, anything can happen. And, we've you talk about it often, man. You give somebody some confidence and boom, they're running with it. And that happens. And, the longer somebody stays around, the more dangerous it is. And that's certainly what happened. Purdue did come back and take the lead, and then Fresno State drove right down and got it done. So, you're still going to see that the first few weeks of the season. I mean, again, the worst thing I think that you can do as a player, not saying that they do this, but I'm saying tune out the noise and don't listen to, oh, well, you're favored big, or you're this, you're supposed to win, blah, blah, blah. Because I do think complacency can set in. And then you just got to get in the game and take care of business. And if you're the better team and you're prepared and you're focused mentally, your chances of winning go up, a lot. But these first few weeks of the season, they're going to be ups. We saw what Texas State at Baylor, Wyoming hosted Texas Tech. It's just what it is now. That's the one thing. The one thing about college football that I don't enjoy is the fact that so much emphasis when you lose a game, you're kind of written off. So you look at that game the other night, Florida State coming out and getting a win, or Duke beating Clemson. I think you got to let a team develop, and losing is part of developing.
Well, they always say that the football coaches, the biggest improvement is between weeks 1 and 2, and we'll start seeing some of that tonight. And speaking of 2, we'll head into the second hour of Indiana Sports Beat Radio next. Zach Osterman from Indy Star, Todd Golden from CNHI, and Travis Miller from Boiler Upload, previewing Indiana and Purdue this weekend. Back with that and more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. JD, what do you don't even use a microphone, do you? You just using your laptop?
Yeah. Does it
Your
come
sound
across okay?
It's amazing. That's
Yeah,
why I'm
sounds
sitting here
good.
thinking, I'm like, wow, his sound is so good, and he's not even using a mic.
It's a brand new MacBook. I bought
That
when
must
I
be
left.
what
I
it
had to use
is.
my own computer.
Well, it's amazingly good because trust
Good.
me, we have people on my going, it's terrible. I'm like, oh, wow, sounds like you're using a handheld mic. It's that good.
Oh, do you go to the coaches shows now over where's
Chop
it at
Shop.
now?
Chop Shop.
Do
Which,
you go to it like you did the other ones?
yeah, I go to about every one of them. Well, I've been to both of them so far. Great place to eat.
I got to get
Stop
over there.
by. Well, stop by. Dinner on us.
Oh,
And it's good. I had swordfish last week.
oh,
Yeah, they've
man.
got seafood in there now that is overnighted every day.
That's a great racket. Overnighting seafood.
I wish I was in it one way or the other, except for buying it.
You know what? Since you're already talking Chop Shop, I'll go ahead and make them the
Time to
second
chop it up.
sponsor.
Oh
Chop
my God,
Shop.
but their meats. Speaking of which, I may have to throw some Chop Shop bacon in the air fryer
Sounds
today.
good. Man, I love some bacon.
Oh, let me tell you, my favorite thing from there is that daggone Reuben. I had it. I went and got it again last night. That's another thing. 5 years ago, I don't think you could have gotten me to eat that. And now I'll knock you down to get one. Seriously, it's got sauerkraut on it. And I'm like, I wouldn't eat anything like that, but I do. And love it. I'm loving it, Jerry. I'm out there and I'm loving it. I should have gotten some more coffee. You know what? I'll be able to do that in a moment. I got a suspicion.
Good morning, Zach.
How we doing?
Doing
Great,
good.
brother. How are you today?
Good.
Got JD with us. Braves Love Fest.
True.
Zach, I got two new Braves shirts this week because I wear one when I watch every game. And I got two. Take a look at it, Zach. Let me show you, give you a little better look.
All right, there we go.
And then I got one. You know the navy blue things that they wear on the bench that just says white with the white Braves?
10 seconds, guys. 10
I
seconds.
got that
Here we go.
too.
That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Friday, and we are loaded. JD Campbell with us. Zach Osterman joining us from the Indy Star as well. Zachary, how are you, sir?
I can't complain. How about you, fine fellows?
I'm not doing bad at all, but it's going to be a Braves Love Fest now. JD, also a Braves fan. Zach, a Braves fan, actually from the Atlanta area. So, and we were just talking about how the Braves are just smoking everybody.
Except for bad teams. Except for bad teams. Can't beat the Cardinals, can't beat the A's, can't beat the White Sox, can't beat the Pirates.
Maybe they just don't care to. They're trying to. Does it? You've been a Braves fan for a long time. When they're having a season like this, where they're just smoking everybody, does it worry you that they're kind of not peaking? Because baseball, it's kind of hard to peak, I guess. The season's so long, but because there's been those years where I thought, oh my God, the Braves are just going to wipe everybody, and then they get beat by somebody in the playoffs, which it's professional sports. I know that can happen, but they're far and away the best team in baseball right now. But that doesn't mean they're going to necessarily win the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, this is always obviously like I think just a point of debate in general. In baseball, it's like, would you rather be, sort of on edge, or would you rather have the rest? I mean, I've seen the Braves do it both ways, and I know JD has too. If you think about the last time they won the World Series, they weren't above 500 till like July 21st or something like that, and they were just like on this absolute heater. They hit from the trade deadline on, they had more wins than anybody else in baseball. And so they went on this just unreal run. They were running at like 105 win pace for like 3 months through the World Series, something like that. And it was, all this sort of, it's the tension of a pennant race and all this. But then, like, if you look at 1995, they won the NL East by 21 games, and they went 11-3 in the playoffs. Last year, they won 101 games. They were in this intense division race with the Mets the whole way down, culminating in this epic 3-game sweep of New York and Atlanta in their last home series. And then they just fell limply out of the playoffs. And then Houston, which was a team that by and large got to cruise through a lot of last season because the AL West really wasn't very good. Houston goes on and wins the World Series, and you can argue probably wins it kind of comfortably. I mean, what's the old phrase Mike Glasscock loves? Can't predict baseball, Susan. I mean, it's like there is an extent to which you just have to separate the playoffs into their own thing. And you can have, maybe a formula that says this is how we get guys ready. And if we can, I think you probably just maybe to some extent just sort of take the advantage you get. If you have to be hot all the way through the regular season, then you say that's the card you play. If like the Braves are in a position right now, I think their magic number is already 10, and it's only September 8th. If you are in that position, take the advantages you have, rest your pitchers, skip days, deepen your bullpen, whatever you want. But I just don't think there's like a tried and true sort of, even last year, there was kind of this discussion of, do you want to be playing in that first weekend? Because if you don't, you're sitting out a whole week. But if you're sitting out a whole week, you can set up your rotation and get the extra rest. And I mean, in the AL, the top 2 seeds, the 2 byes went to the ALCS. In the NL, it was the 2 wildcard teams. So like, it's just kind of like, I'm not saying there aren't things that can predict playoff success, but in my experience with baseball, and this is maybe, the benefit of perspective of age, I just try to enjoy the regular season. It's fun. It's the one time a year where I have time to be like basically just sort of a leisurely sports fan, and not, I don't have time to watch like the Falcons or the Hawks very often. And then when we get to the playoffs, it's just kind of like, hey, let's hope it goes well. So
my question to you is, will you have the Pirates Braves game on tonight in the press box while you're watching Indiana and Indiana State? Because that I used to do that all the time.
Of course.
To kind of keep up with, and like you said, and you and I have texted on this. And by the way, Jim, when you talk about the Braves are smoking, it's a good time to announce that Zach and I are going to start a podcast called Burn Ends. And it's going to be an Atlanta Braves podcast from 2 guys that enjoy their barbecue. And so we've been, talking about that all summer. And, it's like I said, I think, to an extent, at least in my view, and Zach may not share it, but to me, the baseball playoffs kind of have a March Madness feel where it really is a grind to win 3 series and hope things go your way. And I think it's just tough, and again, if you can play like Houston is right now, like they did this week, you would say, wow, Houston definitely is going to win the American League. If you play like the Braves did the first 3 games at Dodger Stadium, you would say, wow, there's nobody that's going to top the Braves with the way that they won. And we talked about them already. But, baseball, like I say, the thing that I'm enjoying the most right now is all my friends who are Reds fans still have a dog in the fight. And that's great for that franchise and great for that city. I lived there for 4 years, and I can tell you, much like there were 3 franchises in the 70s that I thought really exemplified a true regional baseball teams. That was Kansas City, St. Louis, and Cincinnati. And to see Cincinnati and Kansas City struggle a little bit more than St. Louis has, obviously, good for everybody that's a Reds fan and can turn on the game every night and have something to look forward to.
Also,
the other, just real fast about the baseball playoffs. The other thing is you just never know like what little vagaries of the baseball play. Like going back to when the Braves won the World Series in 2021, number one, they had home field in the NLCS, which was hugely important, despite the fact that they had something like 18 fewer wins than the Dodgers, because the Dodgers had finished 1 game behind the Giants in one of like the epic division title races. The Dodgers were exhausted. The Braves having won their division, and I think this rule has changed since then, but the Braves having won their division while the Dodgers were the wild card got home field advantage. And then the Braves also, you would argue, won the series because they had 2 one-run walk-off wins in games 1 and 2. Like there's so much. JD's right. It's like March Madness. There is an element of randomness to it that you can say, oh, the key is to have a great bullpen, or the key is to have good contact hitters, or hit a bunch of home runs, or have your starters lined up, or whatever. But there is always an extent to which some of it is just going to be a little random, and you just don't know what's going to catch fire at the right time. And that's, there's just, like I said, you can't predict baseball, Susan.
Well, also you can't predict recruiting, and in addition to Indiana's football game tonight, they have a gigantic recruiting weekend on the basketball side with what I've been calling the Montverde Trio coming in of Derek Queen, Liam McNeely, and Curtis Givens visiting Coach Woodson and crew this weekend. A very, very important visit. Indiana has no commitments for the 24 class. Liam McNeely is one that has been thought that Indiana is in the lead for, but that never means a lot. But this is an important visit for this basketball program.
Yeah, I just want JD's inside knowledge of what was going on through the summer.
Exactly.
I know you and I have had this conversation, Jim, but I think it's worth repeating. Even if we had this conversation a year ago, I think we could have reasonably said Indiana was more convinced by the need to put a lot of work into the 2024 class than the 2023 class. I don't remember Indiana casting nearly as wide of a net or being nearly as aggressive in 23 as they were in 24. And that happens. Not all recruiting classes are created equal. And Indiana also knew the challenge was going to be different coming out of last season, knowing Race was gone. Miller Kopp was gone. At the time, we would have thought Xavier Johnson was gone. I think they would have had a good idea. Maybe JD knew that Trace Jackson Davis would be gone. And then all it sort of takes is, well, there's 4 starters. All it takes is Jalen Hood-Schifino being a little bit better than everyone expected. And suddenly that's 5 guys out the door, or a couple transfers, which you always have to factor in for. My point is, literally a year ago today, we would have said, it seems like Indiana's plan for sort of roster rebuild, roster retooling, roster sort of reformation in the 2023 offseason is going to involve the portal. And I think we could have looked at Indiana's efforts in 2024 at this time a year ago and said, but it looks very clear that this staff is going to try and swing a heavy bat in the 2024 class, and that this staff is trying very hard to build essentially the foundation for a really, really good recruiting class in 24. They've given themselves that opportunity now. To your point, nobody's committed yet. It does feel a little bit, and JD will know, this experience as well as I do, if not better. It does feel a little bit like they're in a position where if they can get one, then suddenly you've got this momentum of, one of these kids, and all these kids talk to each other. All these kids see each other at camps and EYBL. And of course, this weekend, you're getting 3 kids from the same prep program, which is a huge deal in itself. But sometimes all it takes is one of these kids kind of buying in, and suddenly there is this momentum that kind of doesn't slow down until you pick, until you've grabbed 3 or 4 of them. But it does feel like Indiana kind of needs one. And it feels like Indiana's kind of on this knife edge at the moment of, got to at least get the first one in the door. And, Indiana doesn't have to go 3 for 3, 4 for 4, 5 for 5 in this, whatever you want to say. We've seen Indiana have success recruiting the portal as well. But when you're going to put this much time and this much effort and this much emphasis, on or into whatever this recruiting class, it is clear that this is part of the plan, and you've got to find a way to make that work. And I think that this weekend is maybe the most important, but certainly, the first of a handful of really important recruiting weekends for Indiana in the next, let's say, 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, Zach, one thing as I sit there and think about it is I like the fact that the football game is on Friday night. I think that gives a interesting and unique atmosphere to be able to spend time with all the things that you want to try to accomplish over a weekend, get them, somebody coming in and them and their families getting to know the staff, getting to know all the different people, because as a parent, what you're really looking for is trying to make sure that you're comfortable sending your child somewhere and that that they're going to have the support system, to handle, any potential adversities that you may face as a human being when you go to college. All of us, you want that. I think for me, it's exciting. But again, it is a different time because kids now could take visits their junior year and their senior year. And now instead of, you can only take 3 or 5 visits, you can take unlimited. And so kids aren't going to just sprout out and a lot of times just commit. They want to go through the process. They enjoy the process. And it's very different. Let's say when our guy Cody was being recruited, and it was Butler and Carolina and Indiana. It was 3 clear, distinct possibilities. And, again, it's all part of it. I don't even think that with the way that college basketball is right now, recruiting is a 12-month sport in terms of you've got the signing period for your high school class early on, but then you got to look at transfer portal situations at the end of the year to maybe address immediacy and needs. And 2, you've got to look at coaches moving on and therefore a decommit. And like I say, or something happens on a roster. Indiana's benefited from that the last 3 years with Bates and Renew and McBacco. And so, the key thing as a fan is it's a process that you're not going to know for the next year what you're going to have until, you're well into next summer. And the other thing I will say is you're talking about getting a key guy. I think Hood Schifino was that. But I also think Jalen, when he came in, it's kind of like Victor. Victor we knew was an NBA prospect. We knew Jalen Hood-Schifino was an NBA prospect. I just don't know if either year you expected them to emerge as much as they did. You thought maybe you thought Victor would play through his senior year. You maybe thought that you'd get a second year of Jalen because you had X, but then Jalen got thrust into a role. He thrived in it and, gets to live his dream by playing in the NBA. So a lot of moving parts going on, guys.
And I'd throw even one more wrinkle into that, which is, you talk about the portal, you talk about spring recruiting. NIL has also changed the calculus around. In the past, you might look at a certain guy and say, he's going to move on, even if maybe he's only a second round pick or something like that, he's just going to get to a point where he's ready to start his professional career, to start making money playing basketball. And, if that means he's going to Europe or the G League, he'll live with that. But you can kind of, there was a cleaner sort of set of labels you could apply to certain guys in terms of saying it's likely they're going to leave. Well, now all of a sudden with NIL, and I think this is a good thing, don't get me wrong. I think it's good for college sports in general. I think this applies to football in some ways too. I think it raises the level of talent in college football, college basketball, etc. But now there's a class of guys that wind up in this kind of gray area where they might be ready to go. They might not. They might have enough NIL opportunities that they say, I'll stay for one more year. I'll stay in Indiana where the facilities are good and the coaching is good. And I know I'm going to get the exposure I need. And NBA scouts are going to be coming through all the time anyway, and that's fine. And so then suddenly maybe there's opportunities. I don't think this was ever really confirmed. It was certainly speculated that part of what led Duke and Mackenzie Mbako to split was that Duke brought a couple guys back that maybe people didn't expect to come back. And so suddenly the role that Duke says, this is what we have for you, isn't quite there for Mackenzie Mbako anymore. And I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. I don't think that was ever really sort of like publicly locked down. But I do think that in general, that is another wrinkle to this where you see a handful of guys every year that suddenly look around and say, actually, when I committed or when I signed, I was signing to something that now looks very different because NIL has kind of changed the landscape of where I was going. I might want to examine something else.
Absolutely. I know we'll see you tonight up in the press box. Make sure you are following Zach for the Indy Star, getting all of his coverage on the Indiana Hoosiers. Thank you, brother. We appreciate you as always.
Good to see you. Let's beat a bad team tonight, JD.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We've got more.
I'll text you probably by noon tonight of our Immaculate Grid daily get together. And this is one of the greatest things that keeps me sane is getting up in the morning and doing this and sharing it with Zach. And we have two absolutely different philosophies of the people that we put in that grid. And I immensely enjoy seeing who he picks. And I hope he enjoys the fact that I'm limited in my love for the 1970s, because that's what I try to do every day.
I actually haven't looked yet, but it's a really fun game if nobody's played it. It's a lot of fun. So,
well, I can't wait to see that. And coming up next, we've got Todd Golden, who I can see is already wearing his Milwaukee Brewers hat. So we may have to cut him. No kidding. Thanks a lot, Zach. Appreciate you, brother. See you tonight. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Oh, my Red's visor, damn it.
Todd, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Hey, thank you for everything. I really enjoyed our time together last year after years and years of off and on, communication. And I think you did a great job, and thank you for everything. And you made my job a lot easier. And I love CNHI. I think it's a great, outlet and, reaches so many different people across the state. And thank you for what you do. And I love your hat.
Thank you. I love my hat too, and happy to be representing a lot of the communities in the state that CNHI represents, and of course I worked for one in Terre Haute for many years, but it was great to be there last year. I feel a little bit more chilled out this year than I did last year, but ready for some football tonight.
Now,
go ahead. I'm sorry, JD.
Because you're a Brewers fan, and I know that you also get on the Immaculate Grid as well. Zach and I exchange every week, so maybe I can start including you in sending you, because I'm I'm Sixto Lezcano. That's a guy that I love to use. You know what I mean?
Exactly. He's good too because he played for so many teams.
Harvey's Wallbangers, man. That was a great group.
Yep.
I know about this grid, but I don't know exactly what it is. Is this like a fantasy baseball kind of a thing?
No. So what they do is they list 3 teams or 3 accomplishments vertically down a grid and then horizontally across a grid, and you have to find the ones where there's common ground between them both. So, for example, take your Reds and my Brewers. You'd have to find a player who played for both. So say Glenn Braggs played for both teams. The fun part of it for me is they also give you a rarity score in terms of how many players are picked by the people in the pool of people picking. So if you pick the obvious choice, you're not going to get a very good score. If you pick somebody obscure, you're going to get a really good score. So part of the fun of it is trying to get as obscure as you can. But then when you do that, of course, you open yourself up to not getting the square correct, and you can mess up your immaculate grid. So that's kind of the fun of it. And I'm a big baseball dork, so I love it. I think it's kind of my daily addiction too. So it's a lot of fun.
The Brewers are on.
Are they on it today? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I haven't checked it yet.
3 teams on the side are the Cardinals, Orioles, and Twins.
Okay.
And then you have to pair them with a Brewer or an A. And then you get the final one is the 200+ K in a season. So
okay.
All right, here we go, guys. 10 seconds.
And Chop Shop Steakhouse, Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you on this Friday, game day. Indiana taking on the Sycamores of Indiana State tonight, brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar, located at Patterson and Rogers, part of the Wow Food Group, as is the Chop Shop, where you can find Inside Indiana football each Wednesday night with Don Fisher and Coach Tom Allen, and a great meal. And my favorite Reuben sandwich. Welcome in Todd Golden from CNHI Papers, joining us. How are you, brother? Got his Milwaukee Brewers hat on for those of you that are listening on radio. So I had to go grab my Reds visor and put it over my hat for a minute. So,
totally understandable. I mean, I've no animus to the Reds. I hope
JD's what do they call that? Popping when kids grab their jerseys. Is that called popping? Yeah. JD's popping his Braves shirt, his Braves jersey.
Well, the Braves are going to be a problem for both of our clubs.
As yours with the rotation is going to be a problem. And, I hope again, Cincinnati too, man, if they get in, Great American Ballpark will be lit.
I was actually there on Monday. I was my daughter and I go to a Labor Day weekend game. We've done it the last 5 or 6 years. And with her schedule in mind, we just decided to pop down to Cincinnati and back on Monday. So I was there when they beat Seattle. And I think Steer hit a home run for the Reds. What's that?
It was a walk-off, if I remember correctly.
No, the Mariners loaded the bases in the 9th inning and could have taken the lead, but the Reds kept them from doing that. So I forget what the score was. I think it was 6-3. So Rodriguez hit a home run for Seattle, and Steer hit one for the Reds. So it was good. We were in the shade, so we were.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah, very important.
Todd, covering for CNH Papers, which obviously formerly our good friend Terry Hutchins. And so you got papers all over the state, down in Jeffersonville, New Albany area, Terre Haute, it was Anderson. I'm trying to go by memory. They're all over the nine different places, I think.
Yep. Kokomo's in there, Logansport, Washington, Goshen up north, Greensburg southeast. So, and my former stop in Terre Haute. So it's, and my former stop in Jeffersonville a long time ago. So we're kind of sprinkled all over the place, but I'm glad that we do this, and it's obviously a huge audience for Indiana athletics and the Big Ten generally. So it's been good to do it.
Getting to cover Indiana State while you were in Terre Haute. Of course, you spent time with Kurt Mallory, the current coach there, of course, son of former Indiana coach Bill Mallory. The Mallory name has been around for such a long time. And right now, Indiana State not having the success that they would like to see. But he lost a lot of players, and it's made it difficult for the Sycamores.
Yeah, no question. Their first game, their starting quarterback is out. So, anytime that happens, you're in a bind. The two quarterbacks who are remaining did play some last year. In fact, that churn was before I transitioned to this job, which would have been in the middle of football last year. Those guys were still sort of competing still. Cade Chambers emerged as the winner of that eventually, but it took some time. So to prepare all offseason, my understanding is he got hurt in the week or two before their first game. So that obviously puts you in behind the eight ball. And they have a lot of names I recognize. I haven't followed them as intimately as obviously I would have when I was covering them, but they have a lot of names, but not a lot of guys, if you get my drift. I mean, they don't have that guy on their roster who is going to make a difference in terms of winning and losing. They just have guys. And when you just have guys at that level moving up to this level, it's an uphill climb. So it's going to be difficult for them. They'll be fired up. They'll be ready. It's their Super Bowl, but it's going to be a tough road to hoe for Indiana State tonight.
JD, you know as well as anybody, and some people would ask, why would an Indiana State schedule a game like this, or whomever it could be, Akron, or it's for them. It's a paycheck and it's exposure. I guess are the two best things they get from it, and some experience playing against an upper level. But these games are they're always the underdog. But it is about those three things I just mentioned.
When I was in the MAC, obviously we would try to piggyback with our relationship with the Big Ten. And, we went to Purdue, we went to Ohio State, we went to Michigan, went to Northwestern, went to Penn State, went to Minnesota. And those games are key to the financial success of the athletic program. And there was a guy named Ron Musselman who used to write for the Toledo Blade. And I think Toledo at some point had a couple of FCS schools, and he would always call it the 1AA buffet. And, each week we're seeing teams. I think last week the FCS went maybe 0 and 30 something, but these games are important. And this is one thing that I, even in basketball, when you talk about scheduling, it's important to get guys game experience. And if or you get in a situation where you can play a number of people that normally don't get playing time, it really benefits your program in the long run. From an Indiana side of it, from the lower school, it certainly gets your guys' attention, because they get to experience something that they don't get to experience all the time. We opened one season in Wisconsin. We opened one season Missouri. We opened one season at Oklahoma when I was at Bowling Green. And you can really gain a lot of confidence if you can come out and play well. And I think that's important. I think tests are critical. Getting tested and you know, they're what in the Missouri Valley in football, and there's a lot of quality football teams in that league, and the best of that league, you're going to have to play awful well to beat them. And I think that this gives you a test to see what maybe your strengths are against great high quality opposition regarding talent level that you won't see most of the year, if at all.
And Todd, tonight, Indiana with an opportunity to kind of, well, I'd say get right, but they're still using this to gauge who their starting quarterback is going to be. So we're going to see Taven Jackson starting this game. And then, of course, Brendan Sorsby will play just like last week when Sorsby started and Taven Jackson came in. I've already said I don't agree with that. This decision should have been made before game one, but that's ship sailed. I thought Sorsby looked better in his second opportunity in the Ohio State game. When he came back in, he ended up going 8 of 16 for a 50% completion rate. Taven was 1 of 5, which that's, I'm not comparing that because that's coming down to play calling and all that. But I did think that Brendan Sorsby started to look more comfortable as a quarterback in that second half. Not that Taven Jackson is not a great athlete. I just thought that Brendan Sorsby just kind of settled in as a quarterback.
You probably made the point about what's important about that stretch, because my first thought was, well, they put Sorsby in at the end, in the fourth quarter, and by then Ohio State was essentially, in bend but not break mode in terms of what he was able, in terms of his throwing. But you made a great point. I mean, he was able to get comfortable. And to JD's point about what these games mean, that's money you put in the bank for future games. So for Brendan to get comfortable there at the end of the game, regardless of what the game situation was, because at that point, Indiana was not going to come back and win. I think that was important. I think the game plan last week, which was a smart game plan, I mean, to take advantage of the new clock rules and stay conservative, they were able to move the sticks to make it work in the first half. I thought that was smart, but it probably doesn't give you a very good idea of what either quarterback is going to be capable of, because it's a conservative run-based, plan. So it's weird because I don't know that Indiana State's defense by the standards of FCS is okay. But again, it's kind of, to your point, you're kind of looking at this almost from a less of a numbers view and more of how comfortable the guys are, whether they get into a rhythm kind of thing, because they should be able to handle the caliber of the opponent. But that's what I'm kind of looking for tonight, is to see where those guys are in terms of, do they gain some confidence? If they put up big numbers, do those numbers translate in the Big Ten? Probably not. But what is the demeanor of how they're doing it? How many mistakes are they making or not making? So I think that's going to be probably the thing the coaching staff is looking at, and certainly something that I think all of us will be looking at too.
Absolutely. Well, we'll look forward to it. Make sure you're following Todd Golden, if you're especially in any of the CNHI towns, or following him on Twitter. Buddy, we'll look forward to seeing you tonight.
Awesome. I'll be there. Thanks a lot, guys.
Good luck to you. I'd say good luck to your Brewers, but I hope they lose.
Oh, come on, man. I'm
kidding.
We're both going to make it.
Yeah, that's all that matters. Make it fun. Make it fun. Looking forward to seeing you tonight, brother. Thank you so much. Todd Golden from CNHI Papers joining us. Up next, Travis Miller from Boiler Upload. We'll get you caught up on what to expect for Purdue right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
I think Craig Counsell has been a godsend for them. And
no
the other person, kid was a pitcher for us at Northern Kentucky, was Chris Hook, the pitching coach.
Yeah. Yes, he was huge.
I follow him. I think, and you know what? The guy they got from the Braves, Contreras, has done a good job for him.
Oh, I love that. They need to sign him. He is.
Yeah.
He's really good. Yeah, I'm so happy to have him. So
We're going to have to do an all baseball segment on here sometime. I didn't realize you were a big Brewers fan.
Oh yeah, big time. Milwaukee born and raised. So
Oh,
Reds and Brewers. I should have had my Cubs hat today. Damn it.
oh my
I'm
God.
out of here. I'm out.
Oh, man. Are you kidding
See
me?
you guys later.
That makes sense.
Travis, right
Todd.
here, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, man. That's hilarious.
I've been a Cubs fan my whole life, so
Good for you.
my entire view is it happened in my lifetime. They won a World Series. Anything else is gravy. I mean, I expect nothing else. I'm not asking for anything else. If it happens, great. But they've won a World Series in my lifetime. We're good.
That's awesome.
Travis, I jumped on the Cubs bandwagon for a very short time when Kyle Schwarber was there, which just so happened to coincide when they won the World Series. So I'll consider myself.
Oh, Schwarber's a beast. Yeah, Schwarber's a beast. But I grew up watching the games on WGN with my grandfather. He took me to Wrigley in the 80s. And
Well,
been there
I
ever
watched him.
since.
I wasn't even a Cubs fan, but I watched him just because I love to listen to Harry Carey.
That's how
Yeah, same here.
That's how I become a Braves fan, because in
Oh,
1982
Gary.
we got WGN, WOR with the Mets, and TBS.
Yes.
And so I could watch a team every day, which is something that I never could do growing up in Las Vegas. We had the Dodgers on Sunday. That was it. And we got the Dodgers and Angels on the radio. Travis, I got to ask you this. Do you have a memory, and how good was the 1984 season there?
I don't have
got a
that.
minute.
That's a little bit before I can remember, honestly.
Okay.
I remember 89 the most.
Okay.
The first game I went to was 88. And before that, it's just, very, very, very hazy. I remember Andre Dawson in 87 just having a great year, but they finished dead last. But anything before that, just a little bit hazy for me.
I got to see them play in 89 in Cincinnati when I moved there, when they had Jerome Walton and Dwight Smith. And I got to hit off of Greg Maddux in high school. I'm about 3
no
years
kidding.
older than him, and his brother
Wow.
Mike is 2 years older than me. And so obviously looking at him and seeing
10 seconds, guys.
somebody from your hometown be great, that was awesome.
The golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday. Game day, of course. Indiana taking on Indiana State tonight. Purdue has back at it as well on the road this week, taking on the Virginia Tech team that before the season I would have easily expected, not easily, I would have confidently picked Purdue to win that game. I picked them to win last week, a little surprised, not shocked, but surprised to see them lose that game. But it wasn't like they lost to just anybody. But that's not a great start for the Walters era. Not what they wanted for certain, as now they go on the road.
I agree. And the biggest difference last week was the defensive secondary. They really seem to struggle in coverage. They play a lot of one-on-one, a lot of man-to-man. And they just got beat on a lot of plays. There were some missed assignments, you could tell. And then the biggest difference was in the third quarter. Purdue ran the opening kickoff back for a touchdown. They get a 3-and-out. So they're up 11. They've got the ball. They have a good drive going. And they go down and miss a field goal. And from that point, Fresno really controlled the game. Purdue was pretty awful on third downs. I think Fresno finished 11 of 17 on third down. Defense couldn't get off the field, and then by the time they had 2 touchdown drives to take the lead, the defensive line especially had just worn down, and then they were starting to get that running game going. They were moving the clock a bit, and everything just kind of turned towards Fresno State. And I know Purdue had a chance. They got the lead back very late, but it was almost they scored too quickly because Fresno, I think they needed 3 minutes to go down and get their game-winning drive going. So, I mean, very frustrating, but it's not like they were that far off. And if this is the worst secondary performance that you're going to get of the season, I think things will be okay in the long run.
JD, I'm not sure if you got to watch that game or not last week. It was entertaining for certain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a West Coast guy, so I'm very well aware of Fresno State. And I know each year they're playing teams in the old Pac-12, as I'll call it now, and they're seasoned and they've always got good talent there. But the thing that I would like to know with a new head coach, how did he handle losing? Obviously, you've worked with other head coaches and you see how people, what was his demeanor and what was his message after the game? Because people obviously did think, Fresno State, Purdue's going to roll, and they didn't. But I'm always interested to see how a new head coach handles that type of adversity, especially right out the get-go.
I thought it was pretty even keel. He just kept mentioning how they needed to view the tape and see what they missed. And that's where we're going to find out a lot this week, is how much were they able to fix up and spot those deficiencies and whatnot. I think one of the positives in the secondary was Dylan Thieneman, the freshman from Westfield. He comes in, true freshman, playing the first game of his career, and he has 10 tackles and an interception. There were a couple of moments where he played like a freshman and there were some freshman mistakes, but it's really good to see a kid that was a 3-star recruit. He comes in and immediately becomes a starter, wins Big Ten Freshman of the Week. And I think that's something very positive to build on there in the secondary. And you just got to get the corners to do a little bit better now. So I honestly think Fresno's a better team than Virginia Tech. I think that they're, like you said, they're a very solid program. They've won 10 games in 4 of the last 6 years. I don't think there's any shame to it, but where we're going to find out how well Walters is going to do is see what issues get fixed and what he does to fix them this week. And I thought he had a pretty even keel and knew what needed to be fixed. It's just a matter of getting the guys to execute it now.
I know there's a lot of anxiety about the overall program at Virginia Tech the last few years. What can we expect tomorrow when you go to that stadium, which can be very intimidating? They're well known for their entrance to Enter Sandman and all that, and they had a great program for many years under Coach Beamer. What do you expect to see from them, and how did they do that the first week of the year?
Looked like they got off to a bit of a slow start last week. I know they had 2-0 after the first quarter, but that tells me, okay, their defense was able to score. They got a safety, and they played Old Dominion, who had beaten them the year before. They've got this strange home and home in state with Old Dominion. I think it's a 10-game home and home where each team gets 5. I mean, that's like if Indiana and Ball State agreed to do a 10-game home and home, really. So, it's a familiar opponent for them. They were able to turn around a result from last year, so I think that's good. But they also struggled running the ball. They struggled defending the run. They gave up over 200 yards on the ground. So I think it's going to be key for Purdue to establish Devin Mockabee, for Tyrone Tracy, for Dylan Downing, and hold on to the ball a little bit longer. I mentioned the defense wearing down last week. Fresno State had the ball for, I think, 14 minutes more than Purdue did. And that adds up, especially on a warm afternoon. I want to see Purdue be able to control the game offensively a bit. And that comes with the benefit of, okay, if your secondary is struggling, they can't do any damage if they're off the field. So, hold on to the ball, get the running game going a little bit more, get Mockabee more involved. And I think you'll see a little bit different of a Purdue team there.
You mentioned the secondary being an issue, and for Virginia Tech, although it was against Old Dominion, the passing game is what led them on that win. They threw for a lot of yards, and obviously they're going to be trying to do that again. So is that the biggest worry for the Boilermakers this weekend?
I would think so, just because you got a quarterback. They were facing Mikey Keene last week, who it was his first start at Fresno State, and he goes for nearly 400 yards. And then now you've got Virginia Tech with Grant Wells. He's been a longtime starter. He was their starter last year. He started a number of games at Marshall before he transferred to Virginia Tech. So it'll be interesting to see how he's able to pick things apart. Keene was really good about rolling outside the pocket, whereas Wells here, he's more of a runner. He's got the ability to run, and if Purdue can limit what he can complete when they roll him out of the pocket, I think that'll help tremendously. The defensive line played pretty well last week until they wore down. The front seven overall was pretty good. They defended the run well in the first half, but you could tell in the second half they had gotten tired, and Fresno State was able to take full advantage of that.
And the thing is, Purdue, they are not playing an easy non-conference schedule. I mean, obviously the first game was not easy. They're going on the road for another against another Power 5 ACC team. And then after that, it's Syracuse, another ACC team who I think put up like 2,000 points last week in a game.
Yeah. Well, that's against Colgate. I mean, what do you do? You're supposed to do that in those FCS games.
Yeah, if you can't score against the toothpaste, I don't know what you should think about your team.
But seriously, that's on paper that's a good one. That's a tough schedule, man.
Yeah, and it's not going to get any easier next. Well, it gets slightly easier next year because they do get Indiana State at home, but they also host Notre Dame and go to Oregon State. And Oregon State's looking really, really good right now.
Ranked 16th, I think.
Yeah, and Purdue beat them to start the 2021 season, but by the time you turn around and play them in 2024, that's going to be a different game, and they have really turned it on. So next year's not going to be easy. I think in 25, Purdue's got UConn and Ball State, so that's a little bit of a break, but they also go back to Notre Dame. So Purdue's not afraid to play somebody in these non-conference games. It's not the days when they were playing a MAC school, an FCS team, and Notre Dame. So I kind of like it, man. I like the challenge. I like the unique opponents that you see. And this is actually the back end of a home and home where Purdue played Virginia Tech in 2015. And that was in the middle of the Darrell Hazel era. So not a lot of people remember that. The Hokies won pretty easily in West Lafayette. But I think you'll see a different game tomorrow. I think it's going to be a lot closer, and I really think Purdue is the better team. And I think if they are able to fix just the secondary a little bit, they get that running game going a little bit more, I think they'll be able to pull off the win.
I saw an amazing stat yesterday, not to cut you off, JD, that the two coaches, Ryan Walters and I forget,
Brett Pry.
Went against last time they went against each other. They were defensive coordinators. Obviously, Walters was at Illinois, and Pry was at Penn State, I believe, and they had the 9 overtime game. But what amazingly, do you know what the final score was after 9 overtimes? I think
it was 20-18.
I'm like, what the hell were they doing? It's amazing, but. JD, sorry I interrupted you there.
Well, on behalf of a MAC school that came in opening day in 2003 and defeated a Purdue team that really felt like it was going to have big things, there was nothing greater for me as the SID
Bowling
at
Green
the time.
Then?
Bowling Green went
in. That was a good Bowling Green team. That was a very good. And honestly, really I thought that was Tiller's best overall team. They finished 9-4, and 3 of the losses were either by a single possession or in overtime. To me, that was Tiller's best team. They lost in overtime at Ohio State, and if they win that game, they go to a BCS bowl. So that was a phenomenal team. Had a great.
Can you imagine a BCS team, a BCS team with a MAC loss on its resume?
Oh, the MAC team has been a BCS team.
Yeah,
Northern Illinois in 2012.
That year we also went to Ohio State. The year after they won the national championship, I believe, and we were driving to tie the game. But my favorite thing, I had not lived in Indiana at the time. I was in Ohio, and I was down in the end zone. We go down about last 5 minutes because you never know what's going to happen. I don't even think the game was televised. But all I remember is the Purdue students yelling at us and they were stunned when we completed a pass on 4th down in the end zone. And I just turned around and I said, "Hey, don't worry, hunting season starts next week anyway." And back when I was young and a smart aleck, now I wouldn't say anything, but yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying about this time of year. It's really hard to know exactly how a team is going to react, either after a loss or playing a team that maybe on paper it's favored to beat, because we don't know what young people are thinking. We just don't know. And so I think Purdue, you could erase if they can get a win this week at Virginia Tech, it may erase all the negative feelings that they had after losing at home to Fresno State and get them right back to where they think they should be.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people would have taken a 2-1 record through this non-conference slate because it's tough, but it's not overwhelming. I mean, it's not like they're playing Georgia, Alabama, and then Clemson or something. I mean, they're playing teams that they are on par with in these power conferences and a really, really good Mountain West team. So you come out of that 2-1, and then you get the nice benefit of the Big Ten West, which just looks like an absolute mess right now. I think they could get 6-7 wins still, honestly, if they're able to get this game. I think they can beat Syracuse. And then the rest of the way, the only games I would be absolutely shocked if they won would be Ohio State and Michigan. Yeah, you got the 16-game losing streak to Wisconsin, but you don't know what's going to happen when they're trying an entirely new offensive system there. And then, does Nebraska look good? Does Minnesota, Northwestern? Iowa is always going to be offensively challenged. Iowa's one of those teams that if you're up 10 on them, the game's over. If you're down 10 against them, the game's over with their defense. So, who knows what's going to happen the rest of the way, but there's still plenty of opportunity. It's not a reason to panic here.
Oh, absolutely not. But if they lose to Virginia Tech, which it's not like it would be a horrible loss, but it doesn't matter because they already have the previous loss the week before. If they start the season 0-2, their season becomes vertical really fast because you get into Big Ten where you still have to play Syracuse, which even if they win that game, then you follow it up with a game at home against Wisconsin and Illinois, which those are no gimmies. Then you have to go to Iowa. Of course, you mentioned Ohio State, Nebraska, which I expect them by the time mid-season rolls around, they're going to be a formidable team, not top, but Michigan's on the schedule, a Minnesota team that has already got a win in week 1. Northwestern should be an easy win, and then the Indiana bucket game is always just tough regardless. So Indiana and Purdue are in a similar situation in games that they really have to win in this non-conference slate to keep their schedule from becoming vertical fast.
Yeah, I agree, and I think if it's a bowl season, you got to win this one. Other than that, you're still building towards next year, and that doesn't necessarily mean the rest of the season's a wash. I mean, Ryan Walters has got a great recruiting class lined up. On paper, it's probably the best recruiting class Purdue has had in quite a while. It's on par or better than Brahm's best recruiting class, and it'll be interesting to see how all of that talent develops. And he's still, he had to rebuild a roster that lost a lot of graduates, that lost a lot of transfers. He's got new transfers coming in, and it's difficult to take over in the middle of a recruiting cycle. I think he got hired 2 weeks before the early signing day. How do you come in and convince 20 kids, yes, and, continue to sign on here when you've already committed? I mean, that's difficult for anybody in any position. So that first year of a transition is always going to be very, very interesting, and you're building towards that next step. And I think it'll be interesting to see what that next step is, regardless of what happens this year.
We'll absolutely find out. A great weekend of football. It starts tonight with Indiana taking on Indiana State. Of course, Purdue on the road against Virginia Tech. And we'll have Travis next week to talk about all that and much more. Travis, thanks a lot, brother. We appreciate you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
JD, it's been a fun day. Let's see. Quickly, we've got our picks on ESPN that make sure you go and do your weekly pick. Notre Dame, North Carolina State. Who do you think wins that game? Notre Dame is at home, I believe. Or no, they're on the road, aren't they?
Well, right now, I really like what I see from Notre Dame. I think they're getting some momentum, and I think, again, you could view it as a trap game because, again, everyone seems to be pointing to the Ohio State game for Notre Dame, but I really like Marcus Freeman, and I think he's a great leader, and I think that they'll be okay.
1 minute.
30 seconds. Colorado. We did not get to talk about Colorado. Nebraska. I really want to do so badly. I'm in on the Buffs. As we talked off air, you're not quite so just yet.
Well, I'm in on him. I think, but again, it's like everything else. I'm one of those people that believes, the less you read the things that are being written and said about you and pay attention to them, the better off you are. And I think, sometimes it's an advantage to be a sleeping dog, but they've certainly put a bullseye on their back for the rest of the season with Dion. And that's a challenge they're going to have to live up to. And, they were outstanding last week. I think they're favored to win tomorrow, and we'll see if they can put it together 2-2, because, at that level that they're playing at, they're always going to face good coaching staffs that will game plan for them. And I'm anxious to see how they come out at home.
We'll certainly find out. Big thanks to you, JD, for being with us today. Cannot thank you enough. Matt Taylor, of course, from the Colts. Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.substack.com. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star. Todd Golden from CNHI. Travis Miller from Boiler Upload. Thanks to John for keeping us between the white lines. Unfortunately, looks like USA is going to lose to Germany in FIBA World Cup. But we're back on Monday to wrap everything up over the weekend. Thank you guys for being here. Without you, we have no reason. Until Monday, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.